NASA has done one of the most unthinkable things you won't imagine could happen for real. Desperation had made NASA dine with Blue Origin. We all know NASA want to land on the moon and create a space laboratory there by all means, and out of desperation to do so as fast as possible, NASA awarded Blue Origin with the Blue Moon Lander contract for a mission to land the Artemis V on the moon as soon as 2028, using the New Glenn rocket. What a ridiculous move. For some while now, Blue Origin has been intentional in developing the New Glenn to beat SpaceX Starship, and it's now the only rocket Blue Origin lays its hope on to land NASA's astronauts on the moon again. How is New Glenn rocket prepared to land NASA's scientists on the moon, and will the New Glenn land on the moon before SpaceX's Starship? Let's clear out all these thoughts in today's episode of Tech SpaceX. Desperation is a killer of set goals that would be achieved with time, but NASA seems to be out of time. That is why they recently handed their major lunar lander contract in the hands of its rival Blue Origin. About 2 years ago, Blue Origin was in a heated fight with SpaceX and NASA for a flimsy reason of awarding the lunar contract to one company, SpaceX. Jeff Bezos said there were fundamental issues with the deal and called it unfair. That was like a slap on Bezos' face for a contract worth over $2 billion to be awarded to only SpaceX. Of course, Bezos felt like a loser on this one, and he sued NASA for not being transparent. It didn't only stop with NASA, but Blue Origin went a long way to sue the U.S. government in 2021 for bridging rule of fairness. Not just that, but desperately offered $2 billion to NASA to change its mind and retrieve the contract from SpaceX, but NASA turned down the offer. Blue Origin couldn't stomach losing everything. Hence, they filed a lawsuit in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims. In the court filing, Blue Origin said it was challenging NASA's unlawful and improper evaluation of proposals. The court case bears so many hearings until 2022, then the U.S. federal judge Richard A. ruled in favor of SpaceX and concluded a seal which protect document of the lawsuit that will remain in effect. So Blue Origin lost the case, and NASA won. Now, NASA has gone back to Blue Origin, which they didn't find worthy 2 years ago. Let's hope that NASA is not planning to crash Elon's and Bezos' hit together, since both billionaires may not be in good terms anytime soon. However, giving this a thought, it makes no sense to go back to Blue Origin, since they never gave it a shoot before. And now, the two top competitive space companies in the world, SpaceX and Blue Origin, which happens to be each other's rival, are now working for NASA, even though NASA's favorite will always be SpaceX. But which of these companies will succeed on the lunar lander contract first and reinstate NASA's integrity of dominating the moon? And which of the rockets will land on the moon first? Will it be the SpaceX Starship or Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket? Let's evaluate it further. NASA had previously announced that Blue Origin will work to prepare its Blue Moon Lander concept for a mission nicknamed Artemis V, which is scheduled to take off as soon as 2028. Artemis V would be the third mission NASA had prepared to achieve a single goal of landing their astronauts on the moon again. Blue Origin will, on the other hand, work towards developing its lunar lander contract to make it a success, alongside other partners that has also been given the lunar lander contract, including Lockheed Martin, Draper, Boeing, Astrobotic, and Honeybee Robotics. The price stipulated for Blue Origin's lunar lander development program is likely worth more than $7 billion. And out of the $7, Blue Origin will assist with the contribution, with the sum of $3.4 billion. According to John Kalouris, Blue Origin's vice president for lunar mission, he said that Blue Origin is contributing well worth of $3.4 billion as part of this effort. However, NASA's desperation can be perceived in its administrator's speech, Bill Nelson's, when he said, "We want to establish permanence on the moon, and we want to ensure that we have consistent access to the moon." So with that in mind, Blue Origin itself is contributing over 50% of the total effort to get to not only this mission but to ensure permanence. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson added. So, from this you can see that it's obvious Blue Origin, SpaceX, and other three companies will now run on a visible competition that to an extent, fans will have to choose from their die-hard space companies. The lunar lander development schedule has somehow changed over the years. First, SpaceX was awarded the first lunar lander contract, worth $2.9 billion, in April 2021, setting up the company to develop a version of its forthcoming Starship spacecraft for NASA's Artemis V mission, which is expected to launch as early as 2025. But what is most confusing right now is if it's possible for both BO and SpaceX to prepare for the launch at the fixed schedule. It's not clear whether NASA and SpaceX will hit that deadline. Starship exploded months ago after its inaugural test launch attempt. But it's also shocking to know that Blue Origin is working on a lot of things about the New Glenn components to make it compete with SpaceX Starship. Even as SpaceX deem it mandatory to upgrade to Raptor 3 and make it the reliable engine the Starship will use for mobility privilege in space. While SpaceX has gained more than a decade of experience launching and blowing up orbital rockets to get to a point where they have one of, if not the most reliable orbital rocket ever in the Falcon 9. They are building on the knowledge and experience of that to build a new super heavy lift rocket in Starship, which will truly be an industry leader if they manage to pull it off. In contrast, Blue Origin has developed an expensive joyride rocket and some engines that have never flown, coupled with flashy and classy facilities. The New Glenn rocket is really still only a concept, as they haven't even built, still existing as theoretical experiment, a prototype yet, or anything close to it. But it's better to at least have a win in an aspect than having nothing to boast of. Maybe they should actually get something to orbit to get some experience before trying to build a reusable heavy lift rocket. As Musk has said many times, getting to orbit is hard, and just throwing money at developing or designing different rockets doesn't solve the problem of traveling to orbit and coming back successfully. The biggest flex and strategy for Blue Origin is the B4 engine, which of course has it might when it comes to thrust, even though it hasn't been introduced to several launch missions, though BO is putting so much hope in the B4 engine. But Elon Musk beat Blue Origin hands down by introducing a scalable engine. If prioritized with safety, it can shuttle the Starship between Earth and the Moon. For instance, we all will agree that the Raptor 2 already flew into the sky when it benched B4 engine. That was when it clocked 269 tons force of thrust. But now that Elon has announced that they've hit 276 in the latest revisions to Raptor 3 engine, aspiring to get to 300 by the time Starship starts commercial operations, the B4 will only be a child's play compared to the amount of thrust the Raptor 3 engine will project. And that's a big plus, as any space company will need higher launch time and less production cost. All these Raptors 3 presents favorably. And this brings us to a conclusion that if this was a race where Blue Origin and SpaceX were set to take a race on a line, then Blue Origin has lost. It hasn't even left the start line yet. Take, for instance, SpaceX has track record in rocket launches, especially for the Falcon 9, which is doing a great job launching satellites to our satisfaction and on a routine basis. And after the last test, Starship and Super Heavy booster are relatively close to achieving at least orbital success, and which will come to reality as soon as the Raptor 3 is fully put in full operation. When the New Glenn has not come to life once, let alone seen the light of day. Being impressed at the sight of New Glenn and a successful launch and recovery are different. Hence, the New Glenn is just a theory, or call it a work on paper. And even though the B4-powered Vulcan booster has yet to put an ounce into orbit, and we all know that theory does not pay the bills, rather practice does. That's to tell you that Blue Origin will have a long way to go this new NASA Blue Moon Lander project. Do you think Jeff Bezos would get angry and create another beast of an engine powerful than the B4 to beat SpaceX on NASA's race? While he figures out how to do this, SpaceX has finally revealed the new space station VH1. Just click on the video to take a look.